Now, where did I put my Fragments of Silicon?
All right, welcome to another installment of the Fragments of Silicon Daylight interviews. Been a while since we've done one of these, not from a lack of trying, but it's been a case of someone had to do something at this particular hour of time. Oftentimes petty, but not always. Um, But here we are at last with a new interview. All the stars have aligned, and joining us this week is Julien Marchetti of Ki3 Games.
Hey everyone.
How are you doing today?
Well, I'm doing pretty good. How about you?
Reasonably well, I think.
All right.
Right, so how we like to get started. We'd like to get to know the people behind the games, the studio, and all of that assorted business. And we do this journey by asking this particular question. What got you interested in video games, both on a personal and a professional level?
Well, on a personal level, I think this is a story that you've heard many, many times, but as a kid, I was passionate by video games. I was raised on the Nintendo side of things, so I grew up with games like Zelda, Mario, and they became an integral part of my life, I would say. So very early, I decided I wanted to do that. I wanted to make some of these games, and so I studied for it and got a little bit mix of being self-taught and learning programming, and here I am making games now that I am able. As for a professional level, I'm actually very early in the game because I started my solo entrepreneurship in February this year, so it's still very fresh right now. I'm still trying to get my games out there and see if I can make it in this industry.
Indeed. And what was the spark that made you want to cross the threshold into commercially released products? And I suppose attached to that question is, do you have any experience in the making of video games prior to this?
Right. So I've been working on my game Seed of Life for years. It started out as a hobby project. While I was working on it, I was a software engineer, so I do have experience with writing code and the inner workings of computers. And I think at some point I realized that I wasn't really going anywhere because software engineering is interesting, but it's still very separate from what I really wanted to do. And coupled with the fact that I didn't really get along with the people at my company, I decided to start saving money and just quit. Just leave it all and start living the dream. So yeah, I have experience as a software engineer, and for specifically video games, I've been working on my game as a hobby project, like I said, for years. So
okay,
yeah.
Not the first time we've heard this story. In fact, that's actually fairly common among indie devs.
Yeah, I can imagine that.
Yeah. Indeed. Another question that we should probably ask is: are you a solo dev, or are you working with other people on this on these projects?
I'm completely solo. The reason why I'm completely solo and I actually refuse to work with anybody and to do any collabs is because I used to work on, that was a long time ago. I used to work on fan games with other people, and every time since when you work with multiple people for free, it very rarely goes anywhere, you know. So taking from those experiences, I decided to just do my thing alone, and yeah.
Like, okay. Now, when you say everything, do you mean everything, or as we find is the case, there's usually an element that is outsourced one way or another. Most often, the music of titles.
Well, I do occasionally purchase stuff like asset packs for models and textures. However, I can tell you that the music is 100% homemade because I'm in fact a musician. And I do have experience with music producing as a hobby, though. So I'm actually writing all the soundtrack myself. I'm recording all the soundtrack myself as well. So I do outsource, so to speak,
that's usually
some
the
stuff.
other way, is that when the person is a musician who decides to make games, that's usually when they do their own music.
Yeah, definitely.
Or they will buy some royalty-free music, or something along those lines.
Well, not in my case, yeah.
Right. Anyway, so how far along was Seed of Life when you made the jump to commercial development? I.e., how much of the game was developed before that point?
Well, before that point, I was working on Seed of Life for, I would say, almost 4 years. Not quite 4 years, but nearly there. But I was working on my spare time, so it was the equivalent of, I would say, 2 years of work. And I think that I'm actually not even at half what I want the game to be. So I still have quite a lot of work to do for this game. I'm not sure how long exactly it would take me. Probably another couple of years at least.
Once again, that's a story that does not surprise us in the least. Like,
yeah,
games being hard to make and taking a long time. Yeah, that is the summation of
it. Yeah, it is how it is. And to be honest, even when I started Seed of Life, even though I did have like theoretical experience, it's only once I actually started working on it that I realized, oh my god, this is going to take me forever to make. And I did reduce scope, actually. I did reduce and descoped a lot of things that I originally intended, but even then, the game is still quite large.
Right. It's also, there's a certain amount of ambition going on here. For those who may not be like watching the stream window right now, this is a full-on 3D action adventure type game. This isn't a brick breaker or a simple 2D platformer, something that came out of a game jam. This is a full-on 3D gaming here. So that increases the workload so much more.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I would say that depends, actually. I think that depends.
That is true. It depends on one of the big factors is how well animated your 2D stuff is.
Yeah, definitely. And to tell you the truth, I absolutely suck at drawing and 2D in general. So I do think that if I wanted to make a 2D game, it would actually take me longer because I would spend so much time just getting the sprites right and getting the animation right, because this is absolutely not my area of expertise, you know.
So along those lines, and this is a question, this is a topic that's been coming up a lot lately, and that is generative AI. Are you using any of that in either of your games?
No, I am not. Without being completely dismissive of people who do use it, I do think that it's still a gray area. You know, we still are not quite sure. Well, officially, we're not quite sure where the models were trained and how they were trained on which material. You know, we all have our own ideas about it. But personally, my stand on this is that I refuse to use any of it in any of my games. So I can guarantee you that none of the assets and none of the art that I'm using for concepts and stuff has been generated by AI.
That's a very noble stance to take. It's like I can't say that every guest that we've had on our program has had the same stance. Like
Well,
I said, it is a thing that comes up a lot.
Yeah, I can imagine. And like I said, I'm not really dismissive of people who do use it. I have my opinions on it, but I respect everyone's opinions and everyone's stance on the matter, you know.
We have our opinions on it, but we also, since this is, a interview show and all that, we do want to get insights into why someone would use AI, because, not so much it's a nuanced discussion as it is there are actually a lot of uses for AI. Like some weeks back, we talked to a developer who had to use AI because of the development environment they were working in and the time crunch. And there's going to be a future guest that has unfortunately used AI advertising, and we're going to have to talk about that. So
I can imagine. I'm working solo, so I don't have the problem in this particular industry. But when I was a software engineer, I was under those time crunches as well, and we did end up, the company did end up using AI tools for improved productivity. So I understand this position as well.
Right. So putting that contentious issue aside, we should probably talk about the game itself here. Indeed, for the uninitiated, what is Seed of Life?
So, Seed of Life is an action-adventure game inspired by Legend of Zelda and Okami.
I was about to say, by way of Okami.
Twilight Princess here. The wolf here is very, Link Wolf.
Yeah, there's a lot of Link Wolf as well. So yeah, you play as a wolf basically, which is why Okami and Twilight Princess, so the Zelda game where you play as a wolf, they often come up. So you play as a wolf spirit, and you are sent on a task to restore natural order and defeat an army of machines. In your voyage, you'll be accompanied by a little bluebird who will be your sidekick and who will allow you to solve puzzles and do some exploration. So the goal of the game is to explore, fight enemies, and discover secrets scattered throughout the land.
Right. So it sounds like you will do the things that you do in a Zelda game.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, especially like looking at the trailer footage. I'm thinking like one of the N64 Zelda games, or GameCube, somewhere around that era.
Yeah, that's definitely my inspiration. I'm really trying to analyze and understand the essence of what makes a Zelda game. Because I've seen a lot of people try and fail most of the time, unfortunately, to capture this essence, you know. So I think it's not just about having dungeons and having puzzles. I think it's about how the game is designed around them, how you conceive the levels, the environment, how you interact with all of that. This is all mixed into sort of a cohesive balance. And this is what I'm aiming for. I'm aiming to recreate this cohesion, basically.
All of a sudden, this has turned into an episode of Boss Keys. But yeah, also, there's a lot less attempts to capture the quintessence of 3D Zeldas. Like, when it comes to Zelda inspirations on the indie scene, we have found it's much more prominent in the 2D arena.
Yeah, that's very correct. I think that for a lot of people that I've talked to, we actually have like secret Zelda-like servers where we talk among devs. And from the devs that I've talked to, most of the time it's a matter of 3D appearing harder than 2D and turning a lot of people down because it looks so complicated to make. My stance on the matter is that this is actually just a facade, and 3D can be equally as easy as 2D, and 2D can be equally as hard as 3D. It just depends on what you want to do. But still, from the outside, I think that 3D is very intimidating, and this is one of the reasons we have a lot of 2D Zelda inspiration.
It's one of them. It's also like just a lot of people's favorite Zelda game is Link to the Past or
Link's
Awakening or something like that versus, you know, Wind Waker or Ocarina of Time. So.
Yeah, that's also true. Yeah, I would say Ocarina of Time does have a lot of fans, but for an indie dev who is probably in their 30s or maybe even older, they probably started playing Zelda with A Link to the Past, like you said. So it might hold a special place to those people, I would imagine.
Yeah, certainly. Like, like not necessarily their favorite Zelda, like as well.
Yeah.
But in terms of like dungeon design, a lot of that has to do with elaboration. You can do elaboration both in 2D space and 3D space. It's just you could probably do more elaboration in 3D space, and some of it could be easier. Like multi-floor puzzles are probably easier to pull off in 3D space than 2D space.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. It all depends on what you're going for. Because on the other hand, developing puzzles, like one that comes to mind, the ice puzzles that Zelda games are fond of. You know, those are pretty. Those are pretty simple. No matter, you know, 2D, 3D, it's still slide across, maybe push a block, and it's got to slide. You know, make sure it slides to the right place, and you're basically playing slippery Sokoban.
Yeah.
And I suppose that does get into an interesting question. What kind of puzzles are you making for Seed of Life here?
This is actually an interesting question because I think I find that a lot of weakness that some indie Zelda-likes have is that they focus on individual puzzles. By that I mean that you will, for example, you will be exploring a dungeon, then you will enter a room, and in the room there's a puzzle. And once you're done with that puzzle, you move on to the next puzzle, and so on and so on. So I think that this is. I wouldn't say that it's bad design, but I would say that you can do so much more with a franchise like Zelda. So, what kind of puzzles can you expect in Seed of Life? Well, I'm focusing on environmental, puzzles, which span over multiple areas and which require you to navigate to multiple rooms in order to truly unfold. If I take an example, I'm currently working on a dungeon where you have a central hub room with a huge puzzle, and you can only interact with this puzzle at certain location in this room. And the way you interact with it will unlock certain parts of the dungeon, and you can only truly unfold it as you explore the whole thing. You can't just solve it on the spot, you know. So I'm really trying to make puzzles that require some environmental thinking, and that you have to unfold sort of like a puzzle box in order to properly solve.
Right. I mean, proper Zelda games are no strangers to this, though I will note, like, they are like an occasional dungeon versus the majority of puzzles.
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah.
Well, I do have some individual puzzles as well, because you need to have a game, you know. But they're more like transitions to your next big objective, which is usually comprised of those kinds of puzzles, which can be boss fights as well. You know what I mean?
Right. And I suppose that is a good segue into one of the other parts of the Zelda equation, and that's combat. How are you handling combat here?
Well, I know that a lot of modern Zelda games, I'm thinking of the latest Zelda games such as Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, they kind of lean into this modern, I want to say Souls-like kind of combat, where you basically have to master reflexes and strike at the right time, parry at the right time in order to maximize your damage output. Well, I'm not doing any of that. I decided to opt for something a lot more simple. So you only have a lock on and a button to attack. Basically, you don't have much more. You can't even dodge like in a proper Zelda game. Instead, I'm trying to focus on what I would call puzzle enemies, which are enemies that you have to figure out how you can attack them based on how they interact with the environment and what are your current abilities at this time. So instead of relying on reflexes and dodging and striking behind the enemy and stuff like that, you have to observe the enemy and try to figure out how you're supposed to damage them. Kind of like a puzzle again.
Yeah, once again, Zelda has enemies that have that kind of design.
Yeah, very true.
Though, as I think you noted, that's much more in the earlier games than the Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom.
Yeah, absolutely.
But anyway, now, in regards to both, and indeed one of the keystones of the entire Zelda experience are items. What are you doing in those terms?
Well, obviously, since my character is a wolf, I can't really use standard Zelda items. It would be difficult to imagine how that would work. So instead, I'm actually taking inspiration from a Zelda-like that came out some time ago. It's one of the Harry Potter games, believe it or not, where basically you would have spells, obviously, that would act as Zelda items. So you would have like a spell that's essentially a hook shot in order to reach higher places. You would have a spell that would be like a bow, a spell that would be like a bomb, etc., etc. And I'm taking a note from that book by giving my main character some spells that will act as Zelda items. So, for example, I think that I've already showcased a few, such as there's one very simple spell that's just a projectile in a straight line, which is supposed to be a bow, essentially. There's one that allows you to float in the air for a short period of time, kind of like the deck leaf, I would say. And I do have some original ones, which I like to think are not, do not exist in any Zelda game, even though I know that they take a little bit of inspiration. But for example, there's one spell that allows you to amplify your barking in order to stun enemies and to propel things forward and stuff like that. So I've got a lot of ideas for all these spells so that they can work as Zelda items.
Okay. And yeah, that seems to be a good way to go. Especially since like Okami did its own thing.
Yeah. Okami went even a step further, I would say, with the brush techniques and the drawings on the screen and everything.
Right. Though it wasn't above, let's say, comedic use of natural bodily functions either.
Yeah.
Anyway, and what about the overworld? You can't forget about the parts in between all the dungeons.
Yeah, obviously. Well, this is where I actually differentiate, I would say, from Zelda. Instead of having the classic hub world, which would be the Hyrule Field most of the time, that connects to town, which itself connects to dungeons, I'm going for a different approach that's more akin to a Metroidvania, in the sense that you have separate areas that you can travel to by using warp points, essentially. And each area is conceived as a succession of challenges. So they don't really act as a hub. They more have a role of Metroidvania areas that you have to explore in order to truly unfold. I do have some towns though, occasionally, in order to let the player breathe a little bit. But I don't really have this hub system that a lot of Zelda games do.
Right, and I suppose that gets into a subcategory here, and that's, interacting with NPCs. Is that a thing that's going to be occurring in your game?
Yes, indeed. So, as I said, there are some towns in the game, and you have some NPCs in each town. One of the abilities of your protagonist, despite being a wolf, is that you can actually talk to people, and they can understand you as well. So you can have a chat with some NPCs. You have shops where you can buy some items, and I also intend to have mini games, although I'm on the fence about descoping that or not because of the sheer size of the game already. I do have some NPCs interactions. I even have cutscenes, actually, where you have several characters interacting with each other and telling the story.
That does sound interesting. Especially since, you are a wolf.
Yeah.
And returning to the music question for a bit, what kind of music are you going to be introducing to Seed of Life here?
I actually thought about it very, very early in the project, as I was still prototyping the first build of the project, and I didn't want to do something generic, such as having an orchestral kind of soundtracks, because I know that this is something that Zelda does a lot, like a blasting orchestra when you enter the Hyrule field and stuff like that. Well, I didn't want to go into that direction, so instead what I did is try to emphasize the conflict between the forces of nature, which are represented by your character, and the technology, which is represented by the machines that you fight, the androids as they're called in the game. And so I have this contrast between what I would call chamber music. It's kind of a mix between chamber music, funk, and a little bit of world music as well. And that contrasts with electronic and almost techno kind of music, which represents all the androids and the machines. So, for example, when you're fighting androids, you have like this techno beat going on, and when you're exploring the areas, you have a little bit more funky kind of music.
Not sure. I'll be honest, I'm not sure about that, but it'll be certainly something to hear.
Yeah, I know that it's difficult to translate that well into words. But all I can tell you is that the testers usually have very positive feedback about the soundtrack.
Right.
So I'm personally confident about it.
Well, I mean, that's definitely good. If nothing else, that you are willing to stand by your creative choices, as unconventional as they may be.
Yeah.
And anyway, so we have been talking at length about one of your titles, but you do in fact have two in development, or at least that's what I understand.
Yeah, this is true.
Like, I suppose I should ask, like, what is the actual development status of Temple Maker 64?
Right. So, as I said before, Seed of Life was and technically still is a hobby project. When I started my own company, I knew that I was still years away from releasing Seed of Life, and I knew that it would be completely unviable for me to try and focus on releasing it, because I would completely run out of savings before I reached the end. So I decided on a compromise where I would tackle a smaller project, which would be my full-time project, and I would keep Seed of Life as a hobby project. So I'm working on both. But really, during my working hours, if I can say that, I'm working on TM64, Temple Maker 64, and I'm keeping Seed of Life for the weekends and for the evenings and stuff like that.
Okay. So before we advance into the development discussion, as I understand it, Temple Maker 64 is another, well, Zelda-like, though this one is looking much more N64-ish.
Yes, absolutely. So, yeah, I can't really hide the fact that I'm really into Zelda games. But I also think that since I've analyzed and studied the game design of Zelda games, I think that I'd be better off focusing on that instead of trying to find other genres, because then I would have to start all this research work again. So Temple Maker 64 is indeed more N64-ish. And the reason for that is that I've noticed, after, by browsing social media or by talking to people on Discord, that there's a lot more nostalgia for the N64 than there is for the GameCube. So my choice to make Temple 64 looking like an X64 is partially due to that, and also as sort of a personal challenge, I would say, to try and recreate the technical oddities of the N64, because there's a lot of interesting stuff going on as well.
Such as?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind right now is that usually in video games, when you sample a texture so that it's displayed on your model, 90% of the time you will use what we call bilinear filtering, which is a way to basically get a specific color based on the coordinates on your texture. Well, the N64 is famous for not using bilinear filtering, but instead use a proprietary technique
Trilinear filtering, if I remember correctly.
Sorry?
Wasn't it trilinear filtering or something like that?
No, it's not trilinear filtering. It's 3 points filtering, which is actually something else entirely. But it's called 3 points filtering because, as opposed to bilinear, where you take 4 pixels in order to get the color of the final pixel, in 3 points filtering you take 3 pixels. So you have like this skewed kind of shape, which is very, very reminiscent of the N64 and very recognizable even at the subconscious level. So Temple Maker 64 tries to recreate this effect, for example.
I'm like, and how does it go about doing that in a modern tool environment?
Since it's such an esoteric way of sampling textures, I can't rely on the engine's default tools. The engine in question being Unity here. So I actually had to write a shader myself, a custom sampler that does the computation itself. So it's all custom shader code. Every material that you see in Temple Maker 64 is all custom. There's nothing that's the default of the engine. It's entirely custom.
That does sound involved.
Yeah, well, like I said, it was a little personal challenge, I would say, and it was actually very interesting to work on this shader.
And I'm guessing, going by the title, this is just about the temples, dungeons, what have you, that populate Zelda games.
Yes. This is exactly it. So the original idea comes from me noticing that there's a surge of Zelda makers, I would say, such as Quest Maker, for example, that will come out of early access in a couple of months. And the idea of those Zelda makers is to try and recreate the experience of Super Mario Maker, but for Legend of Zelda Dungeons. And the thing is, all those Zelda makers that came out in those recent years, they're all 2D, all of them. And there's not a single 3D one. So I figured, what if I would create this Zelda maker, but make it 3D and make it inspired by Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. And so this is how Temple Maker 64 was born, essentially.
And how far along is it in development?
Well, I actually made substantial progress. Very recently, yesterday actually, I started the alpha testing phase. So I gave the game to some people in order to sniff out early bugs. And when that phase is done, we'll actually be very close to releasing a demo. And once I am able to release a demo, I will be able to make a Steam page. I will be able to maybe start a Kickstarter. I'm still on the fence about this, so we'll see. But I'm much more closer to releasing Temple Maker 64 than I am to releasing Seed of Life.
Right. And what would you use a Kickstarter for exactly here?
Well, since I started my company in February and I'm currently running on savings, if I do decide to start a Kickstarter, it would be to finance the rest of the development. The longer I can develop Temple Maker 64, the more features I can put into it, such as items that you can place in the dungeons, enemies that you can fight, themes for making different dungeons, and stuff like that.
And what factors are determinant in if you will go forward with a Kickstarter or not?
Well, the main factor is how soon can I release a demo. Essentially, the demo would be the indicator that I am ready to make a Kickstarter campaign if I need to, and if I take too long to release a demo for whatever reason, and I start running out of savings, I would be more inclined to try and start a Kickstarter campaign in order to see if I can make it to the end. But if the demo comes out soon, I should be able to make it to the end without having to start a Kickstarter campaign.
I guess, is looking into publishing also an option?
Yes, I think I thought about it. I'd like to keep it as a last resort, though.
Fair.
But I do have a couple of names that were given to me by fellow devs. So it's on the table. It's like the Kickstarter campaign. It's on the table. I'm still don't know if I'll go through with it, but it's an option, you know.
And I suppose the most critical question at this juncture is, what's the time window in order to get a demo out?
Well, I need to get one out by the end of the year, essentially. If I manage to release a demo by the end of the year, by my calculations, I should be able to release the game, maybe in early access at first, without having to start a Kickstarter campaign.
Like, okay. And how is that looking?
I'm a little bit late on schedule, admittedly, but not too late as to start panicking. So it's still doable right now. I just need to. I'm just hoping that there won't be too many game-breaking bugs that will come out during the alpha testing. That's all.
Well, that's good at least, because it's September now, so there's not too much time left in the year.
Yeah, it'll be December before you know it.
Yeah, I know that. Since I'm working full time, though, I think that I can manage it. It's not when I had my old job where I used to try and sneak some dev time whenever I can during the lunch breaks or everything. I can actually work on the game for days on end. So I'm moderately confident that I can pull it off. I'm going to say that. But I'm still ready to explore alternative options if I can't, obviously.
Right. Like, and in terms of going forward with a Kickstarter, how much thought have you actually given to the campaign at this stage?
Not much thought. I've only thought about what kind of rewards I would be able to offer, what sort of amount I would need to be able to both release the game and hold on the rewards. And that's about it, really. I haven't given more thought to the Kickstarter campaign, mostly because I still want to believe that I can pull it off without it. You know.
Mm-hmm.
Understandable, though. It is also perhaps a wise bit of contemplation to give serious consideration to what that would look like in case you have to go forward with it.
Yeah, I agree. I think what I will do is that if things are looking bad I would say by the end of October, and it becomes inevitable that I will have to work on this Kickstarter campaign, I will still have some time to stop dev for like a week or two and just think about that seriously. And I'm lucky enough to have really helpful people who actually ran Kickstarter campaigns which were successful, and they all offered to give me a hand with it, and I'm super grateful for them, and I'll definitely take them up on their offer. So I won't be alone in this endeavor if it all comes down to it.
That's good.
And there is also like some easier things, like a special robe for people who like even just pre-order the game early or join early. Stuff that could be back rewards or things that could be shifted over to, early contributors.
Yeah, this is also an option. I don't think that it would be substantial enough to support more development time, though.
Right.
Again, it'll depend how far I am into the first version of the game. And I know that since this is the first time for me. I mean, this is the first time actually on my own trying to run a business. Essentially, I know that I may not have the vision yet, to be able to project myself on the long term. So I'm still moving cautiously about it.
Right.
And this isn't an easy question to ask, but I think it is one to put forth nonetheless. And that is, the possibility that you don't reach the goal, not just the development goal, but the Kickstarter goal. What happens then?
Well, yeah, this is. I've always knew that when I started out, there was a very high chance, because let's face it, there's not a lot of indie devs, especially solo indie devs, who managed to make it.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew that there was a high chance that I might fail and I might need to find something else to do. So should that happen, I will simply start looking for a job. Essentially, I do have 6 years of software engineering behind me, so I'm confident that I would be able to find a job if I needed to, and I'm willing to do so if nothing works out.
Right.
That doesn't mean I would stop game dev, though. I love game dev too much to just drop it. So if it comes down to this, I'll just revert to working on Seed of Life in my spare time while I work a software engineering job on the side.
Right.
Right. Which is not the worst fate. Let's considering some of the horror stories that we've encountered.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can only imagine.
I'm like, let's just say that involves debt and liens and things of that nature. So.
Yeah. Well, hopefully I will stop before it comes down to this.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So getting back to lighter questions, relatively speaking, should everything go according to plan and the game comes out at the end of the year, what sort of pricing are you looking at here?
Well, since I intend to release the game in early access, simply because I won't be able to put enough features for the game to be considered a proper Zelda maker, I would say that I wouldn't. My top price would be 15 euros, so 14.99 euros. But only if I'm able to put everything I want to put in at this time. If I have to release the game earlier because I didn't manage to put everything in, then I will reduce this price. That will depend how much content I manage to get in, essentially.
Fair enough. I mean, that is one of the benefits of early access. Pricing is very scalable.
Yeah.
So, right. So I think I have run through my gamut of questions. I'll see if my colleagues have anything further for you.
I guess like the only other thing I was wondering about would be, are the tools you're using for Temple Maker 64 here at all similar to what you're using for Seed of Life?
As a matter of fact, yes. So for both games, I'm using Unity as my go-to engine. And for both games, I'm using a middleware engine that I have created called Orca, which is essentially it's a middleware that's dedicated to Zelda likes. So there's a character controller system. There's a system to manage items, to manage stats, and all kinds of other things that are specifically related to Zelda-like gameplay. And I made it so it's versatile enough to be used in all kinds of different games. So I'm using it for Seed of Life, I'm using it for Temple Maker 64, and if I am able to continue, I intend to use it for future games as well.
So basically, you're kind of like parallel development here in a bit of ways, because as Temple Maker progressed, you'll have better tools for Seed of Life and so on.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm leveraging my experience as a software engineer,
No,
basically.
I get it. I get it. And I think that's it for me.
All right. I think Alex stepped out.
Yeah.
So that means we will be able to conclude things here. So, Julien, I want to thank you for taking time out of your schedule and being with us here to talk about your games.
No problem at all. Thank you for having me.
No problem. All right. So the games are Temple Maker 64, Steam page coming soon-ish, and Seed of Life, which does have a Steam page, which means you can go and wishlist it today.
That would be awesome if you do.
Yeah. Right then. So that'll about do it for this installment of Fragments of Silicon. As always, be sure to tune in next time for the Sunday reviews. And until then, I shall wish you good gaming.